Today, everything flips. New York Attorney General Letitia James weaponized her office like a political assassin, relentlessly crushing anyone in her path. She's arrogant and thinks she's untouchable. She acted like a judge, jury, and executioner, but now that weapon has turned on her. She is under federal investigation, facing civil rights violations, mortgage fraud, and something so bizarre, you'll have to see it to believe it. Even more shocking, MSNBC is breaking ranks, admitting James could be facing far worse than what's already out in the open. And she's not alone. Adam Schiff, the master of the political smirk, is caught in a scandal with hard proof, dates, signatures, and years-long cover-up. These are the same people who screamed that Trump was the real threat. Meanwhile, Trump just announced a high-stakes sit-down with Vladimir Putin, a shot at peace, or a panic attack for the left. Why diplomacy terrifies them and what they're really afraid of. The walls aren't closing in on Trump anymore, they're closing in on them. And it all starts right now. A federal grand jury is now investigating New York's Letitia James. Her office, they've been subpoenaed over allegations she's crossed legal lines while hunting Trump. The centerpiece? Possible civil rights violations. Did she use her power to politically target Trump, trampling on his constitutional rights? I wonder where anyone would have gotten that idea.
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president. It's important that everyone understand that the days of Donald Trump are coming to an end.
Do you think that's enough proof that she violated President Trump's civil rights? Let me know what you think down below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you always have the full story. Now, Letitia James, we do know she scored a whopping $450 million civil fraud judgment against then former President Trump. That was the case where she claimed he pumped up his net worth to score better deals, basically financial catfishing. But here's the head scratcher. No actual victim. The banks did not complain. No one lost money, and one even said they're glad to do business with Trump again. So fraud with no victims and happy lenders sounds more like a political hit job than a financial crime spree. Yet now it's James' attorney crying foul, releasing this statement. It reads, quote, "Weaponizing the Department of Justice to try to punish an elected official for doing her job is an attack on the rule of law and a dangerous escalation by this administration." So now it's weaponization. Funny how that only matters when she's the one under the microscope. Here's former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree reacting.
I think her arguments would be stronger if she hadn't campaigned for office saying she was going to take down Donald Trump. Yeah. In other words, from the moment she took office, she campaigned and was elected on a platform of investigating, going after, and taking down Donald Trump. And so for her now to say, oh, the Trump administration is being political, they're bringing politically based charges against me, it rings a bit hollow. I think from the Trump administration's perspective, turnabout is fair play, and that if she is going to be acting as a politicized prosecutor who takes politics into account, she now, again, from their perspective, is going to be getting a taste of her own medicine, and that she's being investigated for doing the very thing that she arguably did to Donald Trump.
So it was justice when she did it, but weaponization when it's her turn? Sounds like somebody's allergic to accountability. And if anyone's familiar with that kind of hypocrisy, it's MSNBC. Here they are parroting James' talking points like it's still 2019.
Clearly, the Trump administration fighting back legally with the Justice Department as its tool against its enemies.
I find it absolutely comical that he can say that with a straight face after the network applauded the blanket investigations that were brought on by Letitia James in an effort to take down President Trump. You know I always have the receipts. So in case you forgot, here it is.
NBC News has exclusively learned that the newly elected incoming New York Attorney General plans to launch some sweeping investigations into President Trump, into his family. Letitia James tells NBC News, quote, "We will use every area of the law to investigate President Trump and his business transactions and that of his family as well."
Here's the thing. While Letitia James was busy accusing Trump of inflating numbers, she may have been cooking her own books on the side. Attorney General Pam Bondi has authorized her deputy, Ed Martin, to launch a grand jury probe into allegations of mortgage fraud involving not only Letitia James, but also California Senator Adam Schiff. Let's start with James.
You can't make some of this stuff up. Back in 1983, she claimed that her father was her husband for purposes of a mortgage application. That's a big no-no. You can't pretend that your father is your husband to get a mortgage. This is crazy. This is the Attorney General of New York we're talking about. This is the same person that maliciously went after President Trump for bogus fraud charges. He's the farthest thing from a fraudster, and in my opinion, it looks like she's a fraudster. We've turned over all that evidence to the DOJ. We're very excited that Ed Martin is going to be leading this. He'll look at it with a clear eye. He'll do what's right. But I tell you, I look at it, looks like mortgage fraud all day long.
Claiming her father was her husband wasn't the only fraudulent thing that she allegedly did. Watch this.
In the 2000s, she buys a home, which is listed under the certificate of occupancy in New York as having 5 units. You can only really get a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or other related mortgages if you have 4 or less units. It's because units that have units of over 5 are actually more risky. It's part of the reason we had some of the mortgage crisis that we had in 2008. This is a very serious issue. Then she had multiple free refinancings over the years, represented that the units were either 1 unit or 4 units, when really the certificate of occupancy said 5 units. Then, to make things worse, Charlie, she said that she had a primary residence in Virginia. When she was the Attorney General of New York, she signed an affidavit. And on top of that, she had a second home, if you can believe that, in Virginia, that we believe is not her second home. So I believe this is riddled with mortgage fraud. And frankly, I think that's why she knew so much about the law in terms of how to go after President Trump. Was she was the fraudster, not President Trump.
Letitia James is a lawyer. She knows the game. I mean, when you're the sitting Attorney General of New York and you sign an affidavit claiming that you're about to primarily reside in Virginia, that's not a mix-up. That is fraud. She knows it. And good luck convincing anyone else she was making just an honest mistake. And just to really highlight the irony in all of this, let's pull up Letitia's own words. Her post from about a year ago, she wrote, quote, "When powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of hardworking people. Everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank to get a mortgage, and if they did, our government would throw the book at them. There simply cannot be different rules for different people." So while she bought a home in Virginia with her niece, claiming it was her primary residence, she was actually living in New York litigating her case against Trump. A legal analyst on MSNBC says James should be very worried.
There is nothing scarier for a citizen to get a subpoena or find out that they're being investigated by a federal criminal grand jury. It's terrifying, and here's why. Grand jury investigations sweep broadly. They gather terabytes of information, and they're very efficient at going through it. And the problem there for people is that they may be investigating issue number 1 and then stumble across never before known issue number 2 when going through all those documents. That is why if somebody is the subject, the target of a grand jury investigation, that is not a good sign. So given that the federal government has such tremendous power to investigate, Letitia James should be very concerned. Not that she necessarily did anything wrong, but because that kind of scrutiny of financial records, of business records, everything going back probably years, might yield something that the government finds interesting.
California Senator Adam Schiff should also be sweating bullets, because here's the hard proof that Schiff committed mortgage fraud. He claimed his Maryland home as a primary residence to snag a cheaper mortgage rate, all while serving as a congressman for California. See, the scam started with a refinance on February 6th of 2009, and it just kept rolling through multiple transactions until he finally fessed up and called it a second home in October of 2020. Coincidence that Schiff was reportedly angling for a preemptive pardon? Just asking for a friend. Because remember, Schiff is also a lawyer. So he wasn't clueless either. He knew exactly what he was doing. Kind of like when he masterminded the Russia hoax, twisted intelligence, and signed off on lies in those FISA warrants. Here's a little reminder of the snake that we're dealing with.
Let me just ask you one final question. Can you look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email?
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe.
Okay, you're not, you know what, you're dodging.
And Tucker.
No, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails, they hacked them.
And I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over
Ronald Reagan.
You're carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the Kremlin. You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked.
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television, because
That's just so beneath your office because it's so dumb and you're being duplicitous. I'm asking you, did they hack Podesta's emails? And you can't say it. Look into the camera and say they hacked John Podesta's emails. We know for a fact that Putin's government did that. You can't, and you know you can't, and you're hiding behind weasel words.
Adam Schiff is the poster boy for arrogance in Washington. That smug grin, that condescending tone, he's not just a liar. He's a manipulator who built his career on deception. And I've got some news for him. When you play dirty politics for years, don't be surprised when the dirt comes back to bury you. And just so we're clear, these investigations are just getting started. No one's facing charges, at least as of yet. And it's not just politicians that are sweating under the spotlight. Judges, they are feeling the heat too. Did you hear about this? A judicial throwdown just rocked DC. A federal appeals court has handed down a scorcher, smacking down Chief U.S. District Judge James Boasberg for trying to hold the Trump administration in contempt over the deportation flights to El Salvador. In a 2-1 decision, 2 Trump-appointed judges called Boasberg's move a clear abuse of power, and they fired back with a rare legal lightning bolt, a writ of mandamus. Never heard of it? Think of it as the judicial version of sit down and knock it off. It's not just rare, it's a public bench slap from a higher court saying, you seriously messed up.
Today, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals said no, he cannot do that. He does not have that power, and they are trying to diffuse the tension between the court, this judge, Boasberg, and the Trump administration. 2 judges, both Trump appointees, on the appeals court saying that lower court, they should stay out of foreign policy that the Trump administration, that President Donald Trump is trying to conduct.
Looks like Judge Boasberg wasn't calling balls and strikes. He was just playing for his own team. The appeals court, thankfully, just benched him. Now, another major headline is President Trump's big announcement he made on Truth Social, the president writing, quote, the highly anticipated meeting between myself as President of the United States of America and President Vladimir Putin of Russia will take place next Friday, August 15th in the great state of Alaska. Further details to follow. Now, this is a conversation, obviously, President Trump has been eager to have, and you would think everyone would be able to get behind diplomacy efforts to end a war. But nope. Not over at CNN. They've decided these talks are Ukrainians' worst nightmare.
On one level, it's terrible because we're throwing the Ukrainians under the bus and playing right into Putin's hands. And on the other hand, it's terrible because it's not going to work. Because even if Trump strikes a deal with Putin to give away Ukrainian lands, the Ukrainians are not going to go along with it. It's not going to happen. All it does is grant Putin the right to dictate U.S. policy and weaken the Ukrainians, which is going to get a lot of Ukrainians killed, and the war is going to continue. So it's pretty much a disaster on all fronts, and it's a pretty shameful episode in American diplomacy, in my opinion.
So let me get this straight. Trying to end a war and save lives is now shameful? Since when is diplomacy a dirty word? If Trump can get Putin to the table and stop the bloodshed, that's not weakness, that's leadership. You don't have to like the messenger, but opposing peace just because it's Trump proposing it? I mean, how many more Ukrainians have to die before those so-called experts admit talking isn't surrender, it's strategy?
So you think we cannot negotiate with Putin? Who are we supposed to talk to? There's 2 parties in the war.
Ukrainians are supposed to
we are
negotiate
talking to
with the
Zelensky.
Russians.
They have been talking. We have been providing weapons to the Ukrainians. We cut a deal to do it through NATO, which was a good thing. We have the relationship channel open with the Ukrainians. In order to end this, there's no one else to talk to unless you want to invade Russia and overthrow the government. But I don't think anybody wants to do that. That's the only player on the field.
You're putting forth a straw man like, oh, we shouldn't negotiate. No, what I'm saying is that we should negotiate skillfully, okay?
You just don't want Trump.
No, but you just to announce the concessions.
He still has sanctions. And you act like he's not willing to use them or threaten to use them.
He's threatening, but he's not actually using them.
Exactly. There are 2 parties in the war, and you don't end a war by refusing to talk to one of them. What's the alternative? Perpetual conflict? Endless weapons with no exit plan? I mean, you don't have to trust Putin. You just have to recognize that real diplomacy means sitting down with your adversaries, not just your allies. If Trump's willing to try what others won't try, then maybe he's not the problem. As for this meeting in Alaska next week, the president obviously having home field advantage, and it seems the talks of a peace summit seem to quickly accelerate this week after President Trump imposed new tariffs on India for buying Russian oil.
A lot of things happened recently that would make this go forward. I'm not going to mention anything having to do with India, but maybe that had an impact.
I will have all the details coming out of that high-stakes meeting for you next Friday. Another political power play is unfolding. A resolution has been filed to remove squad member Rep. Delia Ramirez from the House Homeland Security Committee. Why? Because in Mexico City, she declared in Spanish, "I'm a proud Guatemalan before I'm an American." This ignited a political firestorm. Take a look for yourself.
I want to finish by saying a few words in Spanish because I am a Guatemalan with much pride before I am an American.
We are a nation built on proud heritage, but when you say you're a Guatemalan before you're an American, all while serving on the Homeland Security Committee, that's not just tone deaf, that is disqualifying. If your loyalty isn't first and foremost to this country, you have no business overseeing its security. Let's hope Republicans hold her feet to the fire and demand accountability, aka her removal. Coming up next, Jasmine Crockett's dirty little secret gets exposed as she clings to her House seat like a flotation device. Plus, I have an update on the Texas redistricting showdown, and new numbers just dropped, giving President Trump a massive win economically. Go ahead, click on that video you see now on your screen, and I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching.